Okay, I should be live right now. I hope everything is working. Yeah, this stream, answering the very first comment, yeah, this stream is going to be in English, just because more people can understand it this way. But there's going to be a lot of different languages on this list in terms of the books. Yeah, to finish this year off, I'm just going to talk about all the books because since I think 2019, I've been keeping a list of everything I've been reading. I may have set out 1 year. I know that for sure, but yeah, I just want to go through this list and give my thoughts on all these books. Because fuck, like when else am I gonna ever have the chance talking about any like non-franchise novels? Because people watching my channel, they only care about like the Star Wars trash. And I guess in the end, maybe Bond, the franchise slop. Karimora, we're gonna get to that one. Holy shit. Ugh. Okay, let's see. Oh god, I have this whole list. So, right before the stream started, I counted 144 books. Disclaimer, I'm also counting comics, aka graphic novels. And on that note, we still have a couple of days left of 2025. So, by my calculations, I have 3 more comics left that I want to knock out. I finished with actual novels, books. So I'm just going to add 3 more comics. If I manage to do so, maybe more. I'm not sure yet. I want to finish Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. That's the only thing that would be missing from my list. This picture I made should give a little like overview of all the, at least a good portion of the books. Okay, let me see. I think we're just gonna go through the entire list. I wasn't sure how I'm gonna do this, but I think I'm gonna go through all the books, and then by the end, I'm just gonna have my top 10 best and worst. This may take a while or be very quick. It depends how much I have to say about the individual books, of course. So let's get right into it. So 2025, I wanted to read more German books instead of books that were originally in English, because I've been reading more, I guess, American mostly. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to branch out a bit. So the first book I read 2025 was Trigger by Wolf Dawn. So I have a ratings for all of these. Trigger is a 5 out of 10 novel. Oh, let me actually... Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to show the cover for each one. So Trigger is a very standard thriller with a twist that I could predict after reading like the back of the book, just a little summary, which you would think if I can predict it that easily, it would be lower than a 5 out of 10, but 5 out of 10, again, it's the middle, it's solid. This book is very solidly written. It's not the most creative or original, but it was fun enough to read and my first exposure to this author. So it's fine. It's perfectly fine. And I still read another book by Wolf Dawn this year. So, I gave him another chance as well. So Trigger, it's decent enough. Next book. I'm going to have to look the covers up for each one. I'm sorry about that, but the next book would be... There it is. Share screen. Das Schwarze Schiff by Philip P. Peterson, which would mean The Black Ship. It's a science fiction horror novel, which is fine. I gave it a 6 out of 10, so slightly above average. I enjoyed it. I was curious checking this author out because he started like many of these like German sci-fi authors that I have read this year on my list here as well, they well, first off, they choose English sounding pseudonyms because apparently that sells the books better, which I find weird, but okay. And it's a self-published author, and this was a self-published book. He has a couple of them published with like real, publishing companies, but this one, it's reminiscent of stuff like Alien. It's a crew discovering a very strange spaceship, and there's, it's slow burn horror inside of the ship, which arguably one very interesting surprise what is actually inside of it. It's not terribly original up until that point. It is a little bit of a slog, a little bit. Could have been, shortened, but overall it was an enjoyable experience. Which can also be said of the next one. Which is, if I can find the goddamn cover. There it is. Oh my god, this is tiny. Okay, this is better. This is better. The Beast House by Richard Lehman, the second book in his Beast House trilogy or chronicles, whatever it's titled. So, what is there to say about Richard Lehman? It's full of sex, it's full of gore, violence, everything you would expect. And it's very fast-paced. There is no fat in his novels, at least, yeah, not in most of them. I really enjoyed it. I think it's better than the first one, which was The Cellar. It is very much a sequel because it does directly continue the story, which kind of surprised me, but it can also be read as a complete standalone. It works perfectly fine that way as well. I would recommend this one to horror fans for sure. But again, I really like Richard Lehman's stuff. And done. Gotta hurry up. Next one is actually one of my favorites. Share screen. There we go. Liebe deinen Nächsten by Erich Maria Remarque. I think the English title is... What actually is it? It's not literally translated. It's like... How do we say that? Flotsam? It's something different, but I fucking love this book. It's one of my favorite Remarques. And it's one of his post-World War II novels, if I'm not mistaken, with the release date. And this is basically about a bunch of like... What you call them, refugees, people cast out of Germany and bouncing between different countries back and forth, always getting thrown out. And it's basically just exploring living without a home, basically. And it's really enjoyable, as to be expected by Remarque. It's fantastic. Oh, okay, sorry. With the next one, we are already getting into the franchise tie-in novels, the slop on my list, which would be... if I could type. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna knock all of these out because it is a trilogy. So let me get this one up. Yeah. I'm just going to go through all three of them here because I don't have much to say about the individual books. The Moneypenny Diaries. A spin-off from the early 2000s. Oh, we want to make James Bond attractive for a female audience, Because at the same time, they also did Young Bond because they wanted children to get into it. Very weird, but okay. If you consider that was the idea behind this. Oh, we want a female audience. I expected the absolute fucking worst, and it's really not. Honestly, this may be the best James Bond spin-off material I have read so far. I mean, nowadays, they started again with doing weird spin-offs on characters. Like, this year we got the Felix Leiter spin-off and the Q spin-off. And it's just I enjoyed. I'm gonna get to that one with the Felix Leiter one, but yeah, these books, this trilogy, it was a pleasant surprise. It is actually very solid. I like the way it's written with the actual diaries and the framing device, how they tie into each other, how they tie into Ian Fleming's novels is very interesting. And it also offers, it's not the main focus, but it does offer a look at James Bond from a different perspective and also his ending, if you will, in the final book, which I enjoyed, and that was a surprise to me at least. So yeah, I would actually recommend Moneypenny Diaries, which is shocking to me. So next one, this was a book I was looking forward to a lot because I've enjoyed this author's previous books that I've read, and holy shit, I don't know what the fuck was going on with this one. So, let me share screen. There we go. Hell House by Richard Matheson. I really love I Am Legend. I really love The Shrinking Man. This book is absolute fucking garbage. This is Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House if it were retarded and horny. I guess I have no other way to describe this one. If you have read Haunting of Hill House, you know how that book is. Imagine if it's written stupidly and for horny teenage boys. That's basically what this is. It's not scary. Again, I love that I picked this picture with the fucking Stephen King quote on it. Again, yeah, Stephen King and recommending anything is so worthless. The scariest haunted house novel ever written. I beg to differ, Steve. I really do. This was fucking horrible. The best thing I can say about it is it was very short. But yeah, if you want a good horror novel, read anything else. Really. Literally anything else. Fucking haunted house novel. Fucking Richard Lehman. What did I have on my list? The Beast House. Read that one. Holy shit. So, and then we get to another one of my favorites. Let me get the pick up. There we go. Das Jesus-Video by Andreas Eschbach. This book is fantastic. It's weird to describe it. It's kind of like an Indiana Jones story, but also not, because it's not pulp. It's not action heavy. This feels like, I mean, this cover describes it as a thriller, which I guess it kind of is. It feels so, for lack of better terms, realistic and down to earth, even though it has all the elements, like I said, from an Indiana Jones story, but it doesn't go over the top with it, and it's very atmospheric. So I don't even know if I want to spoil anything about this one. I mean, the main premise I want to say, because it's very interesting. Archaeologists find the remains of a person in Israel, and they also find next to it the manual for I think it's a Sony camera or something, that's only going to be released in a couple of years. So naturally they think, oh, we found the remains of a time traveler, and therefore somewhere in the country there's going to be maybe like an actual film depicting the real life Jesus Christ. And it's the search for this video, but also debates if that's actually what's happening, if there's maybe conspiracies going on. So many different factions all going after this one. It's just a great fucking read. Highly, highly, highly recommend this one. I can't recommend it to the English-speaking people because this hasn't been translated into English as far as I'm aware. It has been into some other languages, but fucking great, great book. Just in terms of like fun factor, this is very, very high up on my list. And after this one, okay, we go back to horror. because I read... Okay. Horns by Joe Hill. This book has one of the best openings I've ever read in any novel. It is absolutely fantastic. I love the premise, which is basically this guy's girlfriend gets raped and murdered, and everyone thinks he's responsible, which he isn't. And the book opens with him, for some reason, awakening with literal horns, growing out of his head. And suddenly he can hear the darkest thoughts of all the people around him. And, he's going after the real killer, trying to solve that. It's a lot of fun. It is not really horror as much as I would almost call it like a dark comedy. It's just extremely funny throughout. It has some intense scenes, I guess, but when I think of this book, it's mostly just, wow, this book was darkly hilarious. And again, it loses its steam after the first part, which is the main character waking up with the horns and discovering his powers. It's like non-stop just action and fantastic in that first part, which is like 80 pages or something. And then the second part is a bigger flashback. It kind of loses its momentum, but still, I would very highly recommend Horns if you want something, black, dark humor. That's what carries this book, in my opinion. Oh, okay, now we get to a German novel that was actually translated, which is rare. There we go. Märchenmond by Wolfgang und Heike Holbein. It has been translated. I think the English title is Magic Moon. And it's solid. It's a solid 80s light YA fantasy novel. The reason I read it was because, I've been familiar with Holbein. He's a very big name in terms of German books and releases and stuff. And obviously he has written the German Indiana Jones novels that I have read and reviewed on the channel. And this was his first big breakthrough novel. And it was enjoyable. And it even had some nice twists in it. I would recommend this. This is definitely a good one for like beginners with like fantasy. Again, it's YA. It doesn't feel overly simplistic with its writing, I guess. But yeah, I enjoyed it. There are a couple more books in this series. It works as a standalone, but I would be willing to check out the rest of them. Oh, and after this we get another favorite of this year, which is... I mean, this is a kind of shit cover, but whatever. Ghost Story by Peter Straub, which is... Yeah, I think it's my favorite horror novel that I read this year. This is fantastically written. It is just extremely atmospheric and actually full of tension and suspense. And yeah, this is just the best horror novel I've read this year. It beats out all the other ones for sure, with being like actually scary in a way. And it made me read the rest of Peter Straub stuff. I'm glad I gave Peter Straub another chance, because I was willing to give up on him, because I tried reading Ghost Story a long time ago when I first got into like Stephen King as well, So when I was like 15 or something, I tried reading Ghost Story, and I didn't like the writing style at all. And it was very hard for me to get through the first like 50 or something pages. I'm glad I read it now that I'm older, and then I can appreciate that stuff more, because the writing style is what I love the most about this one. So highly, highly, highly recommend Ghost Story. I can already spoil. This is going to be in my top 10 of the year list, which I'm going to give you at the end. And after Ghost Story, we come to another well, it's not a horror story, but another author I revisited this year. So Andreas Eschbach. I just gushed about how much I love his novel Das Jesus-Video, one of my favorites of the year. But then he also wrote, I guess, Solarstation, Solar Station. I liked it. It is very short. It is very fast paced. It is very action heavy. So it's pretty much the opposite of like Jesus-Video. I liked it. But I don't know. Reading that after his arguably best book was maybe a mistake, because this is just like, yeah, solid. Like a 6 out of 10. It's good, but didn't blow me away, which is a shame. But this, I really got into Eschbach as an author this year, and I'm gonna read the rest of his books because, damn, it's nice having a competent, just very good German author to follow. There aren't that many, in my opinion. So, next one. Well, speaking of German authors, this is actually perfect. I talked about Trigger being the first book I read this year by Wolf Dawn. And I read another book of his, which is shockingly, as I was reading it, I discovered, oh my god, this is a sequel to Trigger. Okay, there we go. Phobia. It is unrelated story-wise, basically, except one of the main characters from Trigger is also one of the main characters in this book. And it's apparently a whole series with him. Going Trigger, then Phobia, and then for some reason, Trigger 2. Very weird, but I enjoyed Phobia a lot more. I think I gave Trigger a 5 out of 10. Phobia is like a 7. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the twists in it. It's a much better psychological thriller than, his first novel. I haven't read any more Wolf Dawn books this year, but that's an author I'm willing to check out more from. Oh boy, next author. Everybody knows him. Everybody, I guess, loves him. Okay. Well, fuck. Okay, hold on. Finding an actual good picture is difficult. Okay, there we go. Rose Madder by Stephen King. I did read more Stephen King books this year than I expected I would, because I've read pretty much all of his stuff already. Again, this was a reread. I couldn't remember much at all from this novel, but I'm glad I read it again because Rose Madder is underrated in my opinion. It's pretty damn good. It's one of his 90s novels, and it came like straight after Insomnia, which is one of my favorites. And Rose Madder, it's not on that level for me of one of my favorites, but I enjoyed it a lot more. And I remember now what happens in it. It is one of his feminist books from the 90s, going with like Gerald's Game or Dolores Claiborne. I like Gerald's Game the least out of those books. Rose Madder would be second place. Dolores Claiborne is absolutely the best one, and one of his best in general. Rose Madder, I liked a lot. I like the supernatural element in it, because that's something that King fucks up a lot in his books. But in this one, it worked pretty well, in my opinion. And also that it only came in, like, in the middle and in the end, basically. So yeah, I would recommend Rose Madder for sure. It is also very, like, fast-paced. Like, not just... I mean, yeah, for Stephen King standards, it's pretty much non-stop action. Until the epilogue, for some reason. That when it starts to drag a little bit. But it's like 500-something pages. But it was a very quick read, where he just gets into the main thing right away and doesn't waste too much time, which is nice. With an actually scary antagonist who's kind of cliche, but enjoyable. So yeah, I would actually recommend Rose Madder. I think I gave it a 7 out of 10. Yeah, that's a pretty fair ranking, I think. Then we go back to German books that I wanted to try out this year, and I read another science fiction book. There we go. Die Tiefe der Zeit by Andreas Brandhorst. The Depths of Time, or whatever you want to call it. Very solid science fiction. I don't have much else to say. This was my first contact with this author, and I've read a couple more Brandhorst books this year. I like him. I like his style well enough. I don't love it, though. I'm still waiting for the Brandhorst sci-fi novel that really blows me away. Tiefe der Zeit is really solid, though. I would recommend it, trying that one out. It has creative ideas and just fucking weird ideas and stuff that I didn't expect for some reason in a novel like this. But I enjoyed it. I gave it, 7 out of 10. Solid. Next, we have a short story collection. If I could find it. Okay, let's go with this one. Okay, so I like Ray Bradbury. I love his book, Something Wicked This Way Comes. It's one of my favorites. Or Fahrenheit 451, The Illustrated Man. It has some great stories in there. It doesn't beat S is for Space. I don't know. I fell in love with that collection. Maybe because it was the first Bradbury short story collection I read, but I thought that was a much stronger collection of stories. This one, it's more of a mixed bag to me. I would still recommend it. It has good stuff, but it didn't blow me away, Sadly. And I didn't read more Bradbury this year, I just realized. That's a shame. But yeah, it's good, but maybe not the best first contact with the author. Oh, okay, back to franchise stuff. But not what you would expect. There are actually tie-in novels to the Alien franchise. And I have all these omnibuses where I collect them. The first one is a trilogy written by Steve Perry and his daughter Stephanie. They collaborated on the last book. Earth Hive, Nightmare Asylum, and The Female War. Oh, this is one that would actually warrant doing an in-depth review on it. Because also the behind the scenes is interesting. Because this trilogy of books is an adaptation of Dark Horse comics that were sequels to the movie Aliens before Alien 3 came out, but then Alien 3 killed off Hicks and Newt, who were the main characters of the comics, and then they had to change stuff around also in these novels, to fix that, and they created, they replaced Hicks and Newt with original characters, and then they had to do something about Ripley, who appears only in the third book. It's kind of a mess, but I liked it. Again, Steve Perry, he writes perfect franchise novels. It's very easy to get into and read. What did I rank? Yeah, Nightmare Asylum was the best one. I ranked it a 7 out of 10. Earth Hive is a 6 out of 10. And Female War is a 5 out of 10. It's the weakest one. It suffers because of, it kind of just ends abruptly. And what it does with Ripley to explain how it still works being set 10 years after Aliens and Alien 3, a bit wonky. Better or worse? So I'm one of the few people who likes Alien 3. These books are better. They are more creative because they really change the status quo. That's something interesting with these Alien franchise novels, this era at least, the Dark Horse Bantam era. They fucking destroy Earth. And that's permanent in the next books in this series, and the comics, obviously, which they are based on. And for that alone, I think it's better because it's just more creative. I like what they are doing with the alien now being this galactic threat. I would highly recommend checking these books out, actually. even though, again, I don't think it's the best thing ever. I appreciate it a lot, and I also like the next books. I will get to it. I have a couple more of them on my list. But first, from franchise slop back to real books, we have another Remarque novel, which is, if I can fucking find it. Sorry about that. There's just no better way to do this. Okay, there we go. Arc de Triomphe. Okay, this book is, I mean, it's Remarque. It's great. It's fantastically written, great character work. This one, what I noticed about Remarque, he's very much a romance writer in a lot of ways. And it's actually fucking great. Like, really. His romances and stuff. Because he writes about basic human feelings and concepts and stuff in such a down to earth and simple way, in a relatable way. He doesn't get schmaltzy at all. It's fantastic. But this book is more romance heavy than any of his other ones. I mentioned Liebe deinen Nächsten as an example of one of my favorites this year. That has a better balance, I think. This one, it is still a 9 out of 10. It is just fantastic, but it doesn't quite reach the best of Remarque, in my opinion, at least. But again, I would highly recommend all of his books, essentially. Oh my god, then we have one that I always struggle to remember the English name, which is weird because it's very unique. Okay, there it is. Good. I just need a cover. Okay, so another thing I wanted to do this year is read Indiana Jones-esque adventure novels, because I've read all of the indie novels and I'm like, hey, I like adventure stuff. So I was recommended Crocodile on the Sandbank by Elizabeth Peters. It's good. It's not really what I would expect from, like, when it was recommended to me as kind of like Indiana Jones, because archaeology, real world stuff and mystery. It is solid, but it's not really what I wanted out of that. It's also very romance focused in a way that I wasn't too big of a fan of. It's decently written for what it is, but what it is isn't really appealing to me personally. But again, if you're interested in ancient Egypt and stuff, I would recommend it for sure. In that respect, it's very good. But yeah, just doesn't appeal to me that much, sadly. Oh, and then we get to the next book. So I said I like Richard Lehman's horror novels. I think he's a very great horror writer. I am stupid, sorry. But this was a rare miss for me. It's not that I dislike it. It's just that it's not as good as his other stuff. Okay, share screen. Dark Mountain. Oh boy, I'm already struggling to remember what the actual main story is. It's basically two families going camping. It is Lehman, so we get a lot of horny stuff, we get sex stuff, we get a bit of violence, for sure. There's a witch and her mentally retarded son or something living there, and they are cursing these people. It's okay. For a Lehman novel, it's disappointing, but it's fine. It doesn't have enough sexual stuff. It doesn't have enough gore and violence. It is still well written. Again, if you like Lehman's style, being pulpy and trashy horror stuff. But yeah, it's just nothing too memorable, nothing that really stands out, and in that sense, it's disappointing. Okay, next one. there we go. Again, going back to me wanting to read more Indiana Jones-esque books, The Vault of Poseidon by Rob Jones, a British writer, if I'm not mistaken, an English writer. I enjoyed it. It's not great. It is, again, the writing is nothing to write home about. It's simple and gets the job done. It is an action-heavy adventure story with some archaeological elements, so that's fine. The characters are nothing too memorable or unique or creative. They are very standard characters, a standard Indiana Jones-esque adventure story. It's good. It's also littered with humor, which works sometimes, but it's also way too much at certain points. I read some more of Rob Jones, of this specific Joe Hawks series. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but if you just want to read some like light action books, light action adventure books, this scratches the itch for sure. But again, it's not gonna stay with you for a long time. Okay, and from that we go to a genre that I'm not really a fan of at all, but I had to finish what I started. I need to find a good cover for, well, okay. I finished the Shannara trilogy by Terry Brooks. I'm not a big fantasy fan. As we all know, I despise Lord of the Rings. I think it's terrible. It's fucking garbage. But Elfstones of Shannara it's decent. It's okay. It's good. I mean, I finished it. That's more than I can say for Fellowship of the Ring. I think out of this Shannara trilogy, we got Sword of Shannara, we got what was it called? Elfstones. I'm retarded. I'm sorry. I read Wish Song of Shannara. See, that's fantasy books. It's not my thing. Really not my thing. I mean, since I'm on the topic, Sword of Shannara, even as someone who hasn't really experienced the Lord of the Rings story, it was clear it was a ripoff, but it was well written enough. I could read all of it. It didn't bore me, which is, again, better than Lord of the Rings, or at least, Fellowship, which I attempted to read. There we go. This one I read this year and finished. Wish Song of Shannara, the third and final one in this trilogy. Again, they are all standalone stories, really. Wish Song was fine. And that's all it was. It was okay. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I finished this. But I will never be a fantasy fan, especially not high fantasy like this type of stuff. With elves and whatnot, it's not my thing. Oh, the next one, though. Well, we go back to science fiction, thank God. How would I even describe this? Okay. Let me get it up. We have The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. I really enjoyed this one. This is basically All Quiet on the Western Front, but as a science fiction book. And obviously in a different time frame, because obviously All Quiet is World War I. This is Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken. I liked it a lot. Again, it doesn't go into my top 10 favorites, top 20 for sure. It's definitely one, I mean, this label, Science Fiction Masterworks, I would call it that for sure. Highly recommended. But again, this comparison between this and All Quiet on the Western Front, I prefer All Quiet for sure. Because Forever War, in the comparison, I couldn't get this out of my head. I don't like the ending of this one as much, because it kind of ends on a more happy note. And I think that was a mistake. But overall, I mean, you may feel different if you don't do like a direct comparison, or you want something different out of a story like that. I can see that it's maybe just me, but again, this is like a solid 8 or 9 out of 10. It's very, very good. And then the next one, Holy shit. This, you may know this one under another title. I read a book called Nothing Lasts Forever, which you may know better under the movie title Die Hard. And I was shocked how much of Die Hard, the movie, is actually in the original novel. Like, it's a lot. I was actually surprised by it. The main character's name is different, obviously. This is a sequel to another novel that the author wrote, like, decades earlier. But it's very good, very action-heavy. If you like the movie Die Hard, you will probably also like this one. Yeah, that's basically it. Now we go back to German novels, and this one, I think, yeah, I did a video about it with like the Not Indiana Jones series, which is a very interesting thing. There we go. The first Thor Garson book by Wolfgang Holbein, Dämonengott, which is just his Indiana Jones novel, The Feathered Serpent. Like, beat for beat, it is literally the same book. He just replaced Indiana Jones with Thor Garson and added like one paragraph in the beginning to establish that this is a new character and he has his own backstory. I like Feathered Serpent, so obviously I also like this book. It was fascinating reading it. I kept waiting for like bigger changes, but they just never came. It really is the same book. It is absolutely shameless, but I kind of appreciate, like, I respect this book and Holbein, for just, hey, I know this is worse than him just re-releasing one of his original books, because Indiana Jones obviously is a franchise, an IP, and there's like copyright and contracts and stuff, and he's just like, who cares? This is not indie anymore. It's Thor Garson. But again, it's a great, enjoyable pulp adventure novel. Highly recommend. I recommend you read the original Indiana Jones and the Feathered Serpent. That one is also translated to English by fans. Yeah, just read that. It's very good. Okay. Oh. We continue with German authors. I'm already losing my voice and I'm on page 2 out of 6. That's not good. Where's a picture of it? Okay, this one is also released in English, surprisingly. Flug 39. In English, it's literally Flight 39. Again, by Philip P. Peterson. Holy shit. This book is what I joked before Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny came out. I joked the story would be Indiana Jones having to travel back in time and save Adolf Hitler's life. That's this book, and it's shocking. This book is about a pilot who gets a new job, which is to fly a fucking airplane where a test is going to be done with a time travel device. And then the plane gets hijacked by terrorists who want to use the time travel to kill Adolf Hitler, and they succeed. That's very early on. I'm not spoiling. And then the premise is the main characters experiencing this new future and having to find a way to reverse it, basically. It is a great book. If you're curious about this premise, it is very like airplane heavy in the beginning. You can feel like the author researched into like pilots and airplanes and all of that stuff. It's not annoying, but it is a lot. In like the second chapter already, if I'm not mistaken, or even the very first, it's good. It's good. It's not too much, don't get me wrong. I very much enjoyed this book and would recommend it highly. After this one, okay, I read another Stephen King book, but it's more of a novella. It is a novella. It was published in the collection If It Bleeds. And it just got a movie as well. I think it came out 2024, but I just watched it this year. Shares. Good job. Share screen. And I can't. Okay, sorry for technical difficulties, but what did you expect? There we go. Finally. Okay. Stephen King, The Life of Chuck. The book, not the movie. I would recommend. They are basically the same thing. It was shocking. The Life of Chuck is one of Stephen King's rare good stories in the modern era. Because, Jesus Christ, he has lost every last bit of touch or talent that he once had. For the most part. Still, but The Life of Chuck is an example. Oh, he can still do it sometimes. It's a very simple story that's elevated by the way it's told and the story structure, because it's basically told backwards. And I don't want to spoil it. I really don't want to say anything about this. I think this book works the best if you don't know anything about it and you just go into it blind, and then you are surprised and you're like, oh, that's what it is. Same with the movie, which follows the novella extremely close, like 100%. It's exactly the same. It's literally as if they had used the novella as the screenplay. I would recommend both, but yeah. Very, very good Stephen King story, actually. Okay, now we get to this classic. Oh my god, this is worth a video on its own. What the fuck happened to Thomas Harris? He used to be a very good author. You know, he did Black Sunday, Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, and then he did Hannibal. And then he did Hannibal Rising. And then you could excuse Hannibal Rising at least with, like, he was literally forced to write this one. But then he came back with Carymora. I'm gonna find a cover just so we have one, but it's... Jesus Christ. Carymora is one of the worst books I've ever read in my life. Of course, it was recommended by Stephen King. Carymora is such complete and utter fucking trash. You have to read it to believe it. This reads like a first draft that was like further cut down. It's very weird. It's lacking any and all details. It is baffling how badly this book is written, how bare bones it is. And if you try to argue, maybe that was the intention, like some kind of style, it is not working at all. And it almost feels, not almost, it feels like two options. One, Thomas Harris was forced to write this one and he had no... He really didn't want to. He just shat this one out, and it shows. That's option one. Option two, this was an intentional shitpost, which is what I choose to believe. It is... The bad guy is a German, not really a cannibal, but he's just like the most generic, cliche serial killer type you can imagine. And then his name is Hans-Peter Schneider, which that adds to my idea that this is probably a shitpost. Holy shit. I mean, the only props I can give it makes Hannibal and Hannibal Rising look competent in comparison. Oh boy, I'm still on page 2. I have to hurry up. Do I have to show the covers for each one? We may get it over with quicker if I don't. So next book, Quarry's Climax by Max Allan Collins. I really like Max Allan Collins. He writes very great, crime novels, noir stuff. And I really love the Quarry series. It's a series about a hitman named Quarry who's just also kind of has to work as a detective, some of the times. Many of the books have the premise that he's a hitman going after other hitmen and protecting the targets. Not in every book, there's different eras to it. Quarry's Climax, it's fucking great. I don't want to say every book is the same, but every book is very solid. And I just enjoy Quarry as a character. He's the first person narrator as well, and he just has a very darkly humorous tone to him and a cynical tone that I enjoy it every time revisiting this series. Next one, I read Young Indiana Jones and the Pirate's Loot by J.N. Fox. I really like the Young Indiana Jones book series, and this was no exception. I'm glad I finally read it because this was one that was like hard to get for a while, but now it's available online as well. After this one, I read World War Z by Max Brooks. This is the best zombie novel, I think. I think that's universally agreed because zombies, unlike other horror elements where you can pinpoint, oh, this is the classic vampire novel, Dracula. There is no real classic zombie novel except World War Z. That's the one everyone points to as like the best one. And I would agree. The reason it works is because of the way it's told, basically as like this fake historical text about the zombie world war. Yeah, not much else to say. I would highly recommend it. I enjoyed it more than I expected, in all honesty. Same with the next one, The Second Coming by John Niven. This is so... it's very funny, and it's gonna offend retarded Christians, which I enjoy. I don't want to spoil anymore. It is the second coming of Christ. The beginning taking place in heaven is very funny. There's a lot of swearing, and God is a very fun character in this. And then JC as he returns as well. Good stuff. The only thing I would have liked added into this if Jesus was actually depicted when he returns to Earth looking like he probably actually did in terms of skin tone, because that would have added a lot more commentary. Because I like how much this book shits on Americans and their religious insanity, putting that next to like, actual Jesus. That's the fun stuff. I highly recommend. It made me read more John Niven stuff, but it's definitely not for everyone because the swearing is very over the top, more than you would expect even. Oh boy, and then I checked out an original novel by a Star Wars author, Joe Schreiber, who famously wrote Death Troopers and some other stuff. I only learned this after the fact. It's a YA book. Orewa, crazy European chick. I can see the YA aspect because the main character is a teenager, and turns out the ugly foreign exchange student is actually a sexy, deadly hitwoman, assassin lady, and he gets drawn into that plot. It's more brutal than I would. The reason I didn't think this was like YA is because it is pretty bloody at parts, but yeah, I guess that's just the Joe Schreiber staple. Oh boy, the next one. Dying of the Light. This was the first book by George R.R. Martin. I was not impressed. I was bored, and I wanted it to end. I'm not saying his writing style is bad, but it doesn't appeal to me at all. And I mean, I give it some leeway because this is his first novel. First books usually, you can say, first book, it's kind of expected that they are not up to the usual standard of what the author would show later in his works, but yeah, I mean, coupled with my natural dislike of Martin, just judging by his persona and his main book series that he's refusing to finish, which I haven't read because exactly of that reason. I have no real interest to check out anything else by this guy. Okay. Another book by Erich Maria Remarque. Sorry, I read a bunch of his this year, obviously. Zeit zu leben und Zeit zu sterben, which I think the English version translated to A Time to Love and A Time to Die, which is, I don't know if this is a translation error or if it was intentional, because it almost feels like they confused Leben, which is to live, with lieben, which is to love. And I don't know. Both make sense. I mean, there's romance in this, obviously, because it is a remark. And I think it's my second favorite remark that I read this year. Not overall, not in total, just this year. I would highly recommend this one. I don't want to spoil the plots for books like this because you need to experience them firsthand. Oh boy, but then we get back to the horror side of things. So, The Troop by Nick Cutter is a horror book that is. I saw it on Amazon advertised as like TikTok's favorite horror novel. It's something bizarre like that because some of these books get hyped in like these trashy social media sites by retards. And so I had heard of this novel before that and was already curious. That actually got me worried that it's enjoyed by these freaks online, but it's solid, but I don't see what all the hype is about. I mean, I don't know what to spoil here. It has a bunch of like kid characters. There is some gruesome animal cruelty in here, which I didn't mind much. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's an enjoyable horror novel. It doesn't bring much new to the table, but it's easy to read. It's a simple writing style. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why people love this book. I don't know why they would hate it. It's just like, oh yeah, I read it. It was fine. Okay, and then we get to the first Chinese book I've ever read, I think. It's a novella. Mirror by, I'm gonna butcher this name, Cixin Liu. It's the guy who wrote, what's it called? The famous trilogy, The Free Body Problem. I enjoyed it, and I am curious to check out more by this author. That's all I'm gonna say here. It has an interesting and creative science fiction idea at its core about like, I mean, to put it simply, a virtual reality. After this one, I read another German book, Andreas Eschbach, once again, one of my favorite currently living German author. Ein König für Deutschland, a king for Germany, which is basically just a warning about like voting machines and the dangers of those and how easily they can be manipulated. I was shocked that this started in the US with American characters and stuff because it has Eschbach uses a lot of the time early on to establish, okay, voting machines, programming, you can, cheat the program and stuff. And he uses a American hacker as the main character for a while. There's actually fun because it already shows the Republican Party using him against his will or without his knowledge to cheat the election in the early 2000s, which is fun. And then it transitions because this American is the bastard son of a German who's just like a nice elderly teacher, and eventually he gets his hands on this code that can be used to change, the votes. He gets in contact with like this friend group of his in Germany, and they eventually, first as a warning to show people how easy it is to manipulate the system, they start this new party to elect a new German king and reestablish the monarchy. But then it all goes really like out of control and stuff. And it's a very fun premise that is used well. I was kind of impatient early on because a lot of time's wasted with the American side of things and this character establishing all of that. But in the end, it really came together for me. And it's just a fun concept. That's how you do like tackling contemporary issues and topics in a fun way by, going kind of over the top with it. So yeah, I would highly recommend this one. Back to the franchise slop. I read Thrawn Treason by Timothy Zahn. It's shit. It's better than Thrawn Alliances, don't get me wrong, because double vision, blaster fire is coming at me, double vision. I despise Thrawn Alliances. Thrawn Treason is better, a little bit at least, but it's still not something I would ever recommend to anyone. It's just badly written. I don't like Thrawn's character in this. I don't like the plot. It just sucks. It sucks, man. But then after this one, I read a real science fiction novel. Again, Andreas Brandhorst, Das Netz der Sterne. How would you even translate this? The Network of Stars. It started, and I was thinking I knew where it was going. With a group of people they are charting like unknown regions in space. They find this weird alien object. And I thought I knew where it was going, but it went into a creative new direction. I enjoyed it overall, but again, I'm still waiting for that one Brandhorst novel to really blow me away. This wasn't it, sadly. The next one I read was Shadowland by Peter Straub, which it was advertised to me as being kind of like Harry Potter for grown-ups. And again, I love Peter Straub's writing style. He's often compared with like Stephen King as like the big American horror authors of the time. He writes much better, much more literary if you want. And Shadowland is highly enjoyable, but calling it Harry Potter for grown-ups, that brings some expectations this book is not going to meet. Because yes, it is set in a school for a large portion of it. Yes, there is magic, and there's technically wizards in it, but it's not what you expect. The writing really elevates this. I would highly recommend this, but it's not the type of fantasy you would expect. This is the type of fantasy I like, where it doesn't go with the generic route. It does something creative with it, and the writing just elevates it a lot. The next one is a reread. So, it's The Shadow Out of Time by H.P. Lovecraft. It's my favorite Lovecraft story. Not going to spoil anything about it. Read it. It's just like 100 pages. Fantastic. Okay, next one. Because I didn't just want to read German books, I wanted to read more than just English novels, so, from other countries as well. So I read a Brazilian book, a detective novel by Ruben Fonseca, if I'm not butchering that too badly. The German title is Mord im August. Original title, apparently, Agosto, so just like August. Agosto, sure. It's based on a real event, political assassination stuff. That is fine. I like the main character. And again, in general, the detective story and stuff in here, I like it. What brought this book down for me is just there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of Brazilian names thrown around all over the place. And I don't think that's just a problem with me and like names that I'm not used to, because I read like fantasy or sci-fi bullshit. They also have like names that are just made up nonsense, but I can remember them. I think in this one, it really was the author just throwing so many names around, and in so many constellations, because we have, this guy, and they work for this organization with this specific name, and then there's this, and this guy who work for him, who's the cousin of this guy, and this guy, who has something to do with this guy. And oh my god, my brain was melting. But again, I would recommend it in total. But yeah, that was just the one element in it that just that fucked me up. The next one, though, Schachnovelle by Stefan Zweig. This is basically, how do I describe this without spoiling too much? It is a framing device that I don't want to go into, because the main story is a guy talking about his imprisonment by the Nazis and how he became an expert at playing chess. And that's all I'm going to say. It's one of the great novels that's like always recommended. I don't know what the English title is. You can find it easily, I guess. I think, is it just called like Chess or something? But yeah, it was one of my highlights this year. Which continues with the next novel, actually. The Man Who Folded Himself by David Gerrold. This is a very fascinating take on a time travel story that goes completely off the fucking rails. The main character in this is basically the only character in this. It is fucking nuts. That, again, it's another one you cannot give any plot points away. It's very short, it's under 200 pages. I highly recommend you checking this out if you like time travel stories, because holy shit. The main character ends up fucking himself in multiple ways, multiple meanings to that. You say that, but there are so many great, like, German novels, post-war novels and stuff. Sure. Jesus. Okay. Next one, Auf der Spur des Hexers by Wolfgang Holbein, another German one. It's pulp, it's Holbein. I don't have much like expectations in terms of like literary value. It was entertaining. It was kind of a Lovecraftian story. H.P. Lovecraft is literally a character in it. It was enjoyable, but I'm not really that much into it to continue it. I think it was like, what do you call that? Like a magazine story, a kind of like a novella that gets released monthly or something, that has like 90 or 100 parts. It's fine. Not really something I'm too much into. It didn't blow me away. I did find it funny that H.P. Lovecraft is in it, but he's not called Lovecraft. He's just H.P. throughout the entire story. Is it a Groschenroman? That's like a full novel. I'm meaning dime novel. No. That's not what I mean. It's Fortsetzungsroman. It's something that gets published in a magazine or something. Kind of like Perry Rhodan. They are not even full novels. They are novellas. So yeah. Next one by John Niven, The Fuck It List. Very politically charged. This is basically. Sorry, I'm losing my voice already. I'm on page 3, by the way. The Fuck It List is a very politically charged novel that was released in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. It is a dime novel. Okay. I wasn't sure if that like fits that specific term, but okay. Fuck It List is a revenge story by a man who's basically, he has cancer. He's gonna die, and he just wants revenge on the entire world, and specifically on the people he deems responsible for his fucked up situation and life, including the US president. This book is set in an alternative future where Donald Trump won and also was president during Biden's time. And it's actually fun because he's obviously the last target on his fuck it list of people he wants to kill before he himself dies. And it's very fun. I'm actually going to get to Perry Rhodan in a bit because I read the first book this year. Where actually is it on my list? Did I skip it? Hold on. Am I retarded? Yes, I am. Okay. Thank you for this reminder. So I read the first Perry Rhodan book, Die dritte Macht, The Third Power. I like the concept because it's a very Cold War story about Perry Rhodan essentially making himself the enemy number one, to try to unite the Earth because he found the alien technology and the spaceship and stuff, and trying to open up to the wider universe and stuff. I liked it, but holy shit, is it Groschenroman, as you say. It's trashy. It's pulpy. The writing style is I mean, I can say why bigger science fiction authors apparently hate this. Yes, yeah, that's exactly it. It's janky as fuck, really. And it kind of has like it has longer stretches in this book, in the first one, where it's get to the point, a bit more tempo would be nice, faster, more intense, to quote George Lucas. But it has an enjoyable concept, it's fun, and I would be kind of interested to read the rest. But it is literally, if I'm not mistaken, the longest continuous story in human history, which is insane to think about. It's still continuing today. That's something you will never catch up on. And yeah, I don't know. I may revisit it at some point, but not now. Back to franchise slop. I read Aliens Genocide by David Bischoff. Again, this is a novelization of a Dark Horse comic. It follows the Alien trilogy by Steve Perry, with the status quo being that Earth was destroyed by the alien invasion, and now the human species is aware of the xenomorph. And Genocide is a pretty fun one. Not my favorite, that's coming later, but I would recommend this one. It also works as a standalone, After that, I read Krabat by Ottfried Preußler, a classic. And yeah, I can see why. That's one I kind of wish I had read when I was younger, because, yeah, very enjoyable story. I liked it a lot. I'm glad I finally read it. The next one I was curious about because it was the basis for the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean movie, On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers. I didn't like it, which is a shame. I just found it boring for most of it. Which, yeah, it's very different than the movie, I can already tell you. I mean, obviously. Just the basic plot beats are the same with, like, Blackbeard is there, he has magic powers, and Fountain of Youth is a thing. I don't even know what this one is called in English. The first novel by Ralph James White, Succulent Prey. It's a story where the main character is a serial killer cannibal, and it's the most just. He thinks the fact that he's like a cannibal and he's gonna murder people and stuff, this urge, he thinks it's an actual illness because he was like tortured by like another serial killer, and he thinks that's like a thing that just, a virus basically. That's an interesting enough idea. The problem is nothing is done with it. This is one of those hardcore horror novels, extreme horror. It just lives off the fact that it's extremely graphic and violent, and that can be fun. Like Big Head by Edward Lee, for example. I like that one. But this is just the most juvenile and shallow thing. I just didn't like it. But now we come to a good horror book. Nosferatu by Joe Hill. I really enjoy this one. It's basically a vampire story, but with its own twist. I like the magic system in here. I really like the antagonist, Charlie Manx. And I like the aesthetic of like the Christmas horror that's going on here. And I really like the main character as well. And also the pacing. This one and another Hill book I read this year, they are very long, but they have insanely quick pacing. It's like the German version is like 800 pages. You are through this book in no time. I can guarantee that. After that, we have another franchise book, which is one of my favorites this year. The Price of Freedom by A.C. Crispin. It is the backstory for Jack Sparrow. It is massive. It is actually fucking massive, this book. And it is A.C. Crispin. I mean, she wrote the Han Solo trilogy, which is one of my absolute favorites in terms of Star Wars novels. And Price of Freedom does for Jack Sparrow what she did for Han Solo. I wish it were a trilogy because there is enough material there, but as a standalone massive fucking experience of like almost 800 pages or what it was. Highly, highly recommended. After this one, I read Stephen King's Nightmare in the Sky. It's an essay. He just wrote an essay about gargoyles, and the rest of the book, it's just pictures, photographs of gargoyles, because it's like a coffee table book or what you call it. It's nothing. It's whatever. Whatever. Back to franchise stuff. Young Indiana Jones, The Mata Hari Affair by James Luceno is fucking excellent. He elevates an episode that I thought was mediocre. He makes it much better. I don't know if his novelization was based on an earlier script, but I would highly recommend this one. If you're a fan of James Luceno, his writing, he's a fucking best Star Wars author. But also, if you're a fan of indie, it's pretty great. It also adapts the previous episode, the Verdun episode. So you get a little bit of like actual World War II stuff, and then you get a romance story with Mata Hari. Yeah, and it's done very, very well. Back to German science fiction. Der letzte Tag der Schöpfung by Wolfgang Jeschke. It's a time travel story that I really enjoyed, with the Americans pretty much just the bad guys. Yeah, it's very short. Mostly it made me interested in checking out more of Jeschke's books. Oh, next one. This is confusing because I don't think it exists in English, but it's not the same collection of stories. I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream, the Harlan Ellison collection and short story. My first experience with Harlan Ellison, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Very creative stories. I liked them a lot. Not much else to say here. I'm just glad I finally checked him out. But after this, I went back because I had to read The Dark Half by Stephen King. This book is fine. It's pretty mediocre. It's pretty violent and gory and bloody for a Stephen King novel. Because even though he's a horror writer, I don't think I mean, compared to some of the other ones on my list, he's pretty tame most of the time. But Dark Half, interesting premise, but that's about it. It's an easy and quick read. If you like Stephen King, it's worth checking out. After this one, I read one of the French exclusive Young Indiana Jones novels, Young Indiana Jones and the Child Llama by Richard, how do you even pronounce that? Brunier. It's good. Again, these young indie books, they are all very solid. There's not a single one that I dislike. This one, it's fun, Indie and the Child Dalai Lama. The main thing I remember though is, first off, a lot of Henry Sr., which is always a plus, but also an ending that contradicts, I guess, the movies, but indie in general, when he gives away his famous fedora at the end. It's supposed to be a sweet moment within the story that works, but obviously that would be a big continuity problem. But it's solid. I would recommend it. And then I checked out, because I liked Price of Freedom a lot, I checked out the Young Jack Sparrow book series. I'm just gonna talk about all of them in this. All written by Rob Kidd, which is a pseudonym for a bunch of different authors, if I'm not mistaken. So I read not all of them, just a couple. The Coming Storm, The Siren Song, The Pirate Chase, The Sword of Cortez, The Age of Bronze, Silver, and City of Gold. It's fun. It is very much written for a younger audience, but I think, it's entertaining. Jack Sparrow as a younger character is captured pretty well. It has some creative, magic elements and stuff to it. I would recommend it if you're a fan of Pirates of the Caribbean, of the trilogy. Yeah, it's worth checking out. But obviously not as good as A.C. Crispin's novel, because that's an actual adult novel and stuff, and it's A.C. Crispin. It's just better. After this one, I read... I have to actually check what the fuck this is called in English. So I read a novel by Haruki Murakami, the Japanese author, who I always see recommended, so I tried this one, and it's kind of like a romance novel with some. Apparently, it caused a controversy, at least here in Germany, when it was released because of its spicy elements. I don't see it, but I don't know. Maybe I just have read enough horror shit. It's written well. I mean, that's all I can say about it. I didn't care much for it, and I don't remember much of it. After this one, I went back to reading Andreas Eschbach. Perfect Copy, die zweite Schöpfung, a YA novel, again about a modern topic of cloning, and obviously used in a more sci-fi story because it's about human cloning in this case. Very enjoyable, and yeah, again, I just like reading like young adult books that feel respectful, where it doesn't feel like the author is like dumbing it, like making it stupid for younger readers. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed Perfect Copy. Then I read a hard case crime release, The Hot Beat by Robert Silverberg, which is a pretty standard but pretty fun and entertaining noir story, a crime story. It's nothing too memorable, but it passed the time. But now we're gonna get to something very memorable. The Cannibals of Candyland by Carlton Melick III. This book is fucking insane. This is absolute fucking nuts, and I can't talk about it. It is funny, it is extremely creative, it's insane, it's sexual as hell. Highly recommend. It's very short as well, so Okay, I'm on page 4. Oh my god, my voice is killing me. I read the second book of Rob Jones's Joe Hawk action adventure series, Thunder God. It's pretty much the same as the first book. Standard characters, decent enough writing for what this is. Good action, some interesting like archaeological stuff that's thrown in here. Humor that sometimes works, but is often misplaced and too much. Again, a solid read if you're just in the mood for like simple action adventure stories. This is like your dad, your elderly father watching like a generic action movie on TV. That's basically the book equivalent of this. Okay, franchise works. I read Tarkin by James Luceno, which I liked a lot more than the first time I read it years ago. Highly recommend, actually. And after this, I also read. Oh, yeah, I read Catalyst by James Luceno. That one I didn't like as much as Tarkin, surprisingly, because usually it's rated higher. I can see the argument why, obviously, Catalyst would be enjoyed more. They're pretty even for me, but I still prefer Tarkin. But yeah, both I would recommend. James Luceno, best Star Wars author, always delivers quality stuff. Another crime book I read, one of my favorites, Der Richter und sein Henker by Friedrich Dürrenmatt. The Judge and His Hangman in English. I was shocked how good this is. Highly recommend. I read next one, The Snows of Kilimanjaro by Ernest Hemingway, a short story collection. I didn't actually care much for it, which is shocking. It's not my first Hemingway because I read at least one or two before I read Old Man and the Sea. This is fine. Again, I like his writing style and stuff. That's all good. I didn't find most of the stories all too memorable. That's the only problem, really. After this one, I read No Longer Human, I think is the English title, I hope, by Osamu Dazai, and it's very depressing. Yeah, very depressing. That's the best way to describe it. I would highly recommend it, like, don't get me wrong, but you have to be in the mood for this one. Albert Camus, what is this one called in English? The Exile and the Kingdom, I think. That's a short story collection. I like this one a lot. Obviously, it doesn't top like his novel, The Stranger, but yeah, that was my second read. Um, well, my second book by this author, and yep, I enjoyed it a lot. Would recommend. Oh god, after this one, I read. I have no idea what this one is actually called in English. The Three Investigators, the very first novel about a haunted castle by Robert Arthur. This one shocked me because I only knew of the Three Investigators, or as they are called in Germany, die drei Fragezeichen. I assumed they were a German invention, like a German series and franchise, but nope, they started American. I was shocked. I was shocked that this series was so closely tied to Alfred Hitchcock. I think this book in German re-releases has been changed, because they couldn't use Hitchcock anymore. But I read the original translation, so it's very enjoyable. I liked it. I'm glad I read this one, and yeah, I mean, I would be interested in checking out the rest. Going back into this franchise because I haven't really experienced drei Fragezeichen stories since I was a child. Okay, next one. That's another disappointing classic, I guess you can call it. Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. I don't know what I was expecting. I didn't know anything about the story. I know there's a famous movie. I know it's a famous thing in general, so I wanted to check it out. It's a gay vampire custody battle for a child, and that's basically it. And sure, it was funny and enjoyable at times, but no, I don't know if I would recommend this. It's just I'm glad I read it, but never again. After this one, the next one is my favorite out of this series so far. Aliens. Those adaptations of the Dark Horse comics, Aliens, Alien Harvest by Robert Sheckley. It's dark, it's fucked up, and it's my favorite. I can't spoil it much. I just want to say this one has a man-made robot xenomorph in it. So yeah, that's worth checking out. And then we get to my very first Agatha Christie novel, And Then There Were None. I'm kind of shocked. I was kind of shocked how much I ended up liking this. That's I don't have much to say. It's another classic that everybody has heard about, and the general summary, like what is it supposed to be about? It's this whodunit, a group of people killed one after the other. I didn't know the twists and stuff, which I'm glad, because this worked wonderfully. After this one doesn't have an equivalent in English. I just read a short story collection by Edgar Allan Poe, collecting his stuff. And I liked it a lot. I've only read like a handful of Poe short stories before, and this was just now for the first time a bunch of them in one book. One after the other. And yeah, I really got into his writing style. It took me a little bit with the first story, getting into it, but yeah, very good stuff. After that, another Wolfgang Holbein novel, Azrael. It's what I would call the typical Holbein experience. Good idea, decent, competent writing style, shit ending, rushed shit ending. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would recommend. It's Wolfgang Holbein, you know what you get with him. Pnin, Vladimir Nabokov. Yeah, it's good. I liked it. That's another one where it maybe takes a bit to get into the writing style of the author, but it's very funny. Like, it's a very humorous novel that I would definitely recommend. I think this one is an easy one to get into for like newcomers to his style to see if they can get through it. On that note, the next one would be Der Tod in Venedig by Thomas Mann. Similar. It's short, but it's very memorable, and a good introduction to this specific author's style. After this, we get, oh, this is the only poem on my list, Deutschland, ein Wintermärchen by Heinrich Heine. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, but yeah, it's just a classic that I wanted to get through, and I actually enjoyed it. You know, it told a story, and I could follow what was written. So, and I don't know anything about poetry. I don't care for it. That's the highest praise I can give it. You know? Speaking of highest praise, The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This is a South Korean novel. Very much insane, very creative, very memorable. One of my absolute favorite books this year. Followed by Alexis Sorbas by Nikos Kazantzakis, a Greek novel, which it's basically we follow two characters, one of which is the titular Alexis Sorbas, and we just learn about like his life philosophies and stuff. It was fun. It was fun, but again, if you expect something story heavy, you're not gonna get it. Next one, Hoffmann's Der Sandmann. I think this is the oldest book on my list, but I liked it a lot. It's another classic that I just wanted to read and see if it holds up. It definitely does for me. It's a nice horror tale. Yeah, highly recommend this one. Oh, okay, a novella collection by Joe Hill, Strange Weather. The first story very much feels like it could be a Stephen King, from classic Stephen King. It's basically a story about dementia, and it's told by using like a very fun supernatural gimmick. So yeah, it was enjoyable in that way. The second story, Loaded, is one of my favorite reads this year. It's a crime story where we know everything. We know everything that has happened, but it works because we follow the villain essentially. Highly recommend reading at least this one, at least Loaded, out of this collection. The next one is fine. It's also creative. A guy with relationship drama lands on a cloud that turns out to be a sentient spaceship. And then the last one is a post-apocalyptic story where, like, it's a parody of Joe Hill's The Fireman, which is a book I attempted to read years ago and I didn't like. I like this parody story a bit more. But yeah, the first three stories were my highlights here, especially the second one. Then I read Der Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. It's another classic, which I'm glad I read it, but I wouldn't read it again. I get the point of it, but it wasn't that enjoyable of an experience. I much prefer Hesse's Siddhartha. That was the first book of his I read, and I think that one is much better. As an introduction to his writing and just in general, it's a more enjoyable experience for me. Then I read Der Kontrabass by Patrick Süskind because it was short and I wanted to get to his Parfüm. I liked it a lot. That's basically it. I don't have much to say about much of these other than I enjoyed it because, there's just not much to say with these. This one is another topic though. I finally read Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I haven't seen the movie in years. The book, they are pretty close, but there are clear differences. Also with like characterization and stuff. And it was such a fucking joy to read this book. I was worried, like, I know the movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but I know the movie. Is this going to be enjoyable? Is this going to be heavy on, like, I don't know, the technology, for example? It kind of is, but also isn't. This works just as an adventure novel. It also works. It's similar to like Andreas Eschbach, what I talked about earlier, where he's using like contemporary topics and he's putting a creative spin on it. Like with his book König für Deutschland, it was like voting machines and stuff and how you can manipulate them. And with this, it was the current topic of like genetics and stuff and cloning again. Again, Eschbach did this in Perfect Copy. I also mentioned that one. It's very enjoyable. I highly recommend you read Jurassic Park, even if you know the movie and you think that you may not get much out of the book. You definitely will. It's just a lot of fun. Which I can't say for the next book. Hunters of Dune by Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert. This book is AIDS. This book is cancer. This book is an insult to Frank Herbert, to his legacy, to Dune, and to writing in general. And it's definitely going to be better than the second book in this, which is Sandworms of Dune, which I'm going to read in 2026. And I already regret this decision. Okay, I'm already on page 5. This is good. Quarry's War by Max Allan Collins. This is a comic instead of a novel like the rest of the series. I talked about the Quarry series already. I love it. It's kind of like a comfort book series where anytime I pick up a new one, it's just like, I know I'm going to enjoy this. The main character is a hitman who eliminates other hitmen. Mostly, there's obviously some different plots. But I just enjoy the comedy, in the dark comedy in there. I enjoy the main character's cynical tone. It's just, yeah, comfort reading. And Quarry's War is no exception. Just this time it's a comic, and we get a bit more of his backstory, with him being like a veteran of the war and stuff. Fun stuff. Oh, more hard case crime, because after this I read The Cocktail Waitress by James M. Cain. Famously, he wrote The Postman Always Rings Twice, which I haven't read yet, but I'm curious because I really enjoyed The Cocktail Waitress. Just a very enjoyable crime story from a different perspective. From a female perspective, which is something I'm not really used to with these types of crime novels so far that I have experienced. After this, back to franchise garbage. Alien Out of the Shadows by Tim Levin. This book is stupid. It has some good like horror and alien stuff in it, as you would expect. And it's easy to read, but the story is so fucking stupid. It's set between Alien and Aliens, but Ellen Ripley is one of the main characters. And obviously, she has to lose all of her memories by the end, which is done in such a badly constructed and quick way. It's shit. It's pretty shit. After this, I read The Fall by Albert Camus. Again, it's good. I like his style. I didn't like it as much as The Stranger or his short story collection. Yeah, after this, I read a collection of short stories by Franz Kafka. Again, with some of these classic, it's like, what do you want me to say? Like, yeah, I enjoyed it. It's good. Like, you all have heard about it. Oh boy, then we get... Okay. I love the book The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. It's just a solid collaboration and a pretty standard fantasy young adult story. But I like that because it's something you wouldn't expect from two horror authors teaming up. And then we have the sequel, Black House by Stephen King and Peter Straub. I liked it way more on a second read because they go for a very unique writing style where they are basically the narrators, and it's told like right here and now we are floating above the city looking down on the buildings, and now we're going to follow this character and what he's doing, and it's like that throughout basically the entire book. When I was younger and I read it for the first time, I hated that, but now I think, wow, this is actually pretty creative, pretty fun, and after the first 50 or 100 pages at least, you get into it. And I like the main story. I like how it ties into the Dark Tower series. I didn't need that. I would have liked if the Talisman, Jack Sawyer stuff was its own continuity, if you will. But as it is, it works, even if you're not familiar with the Dark Tower series. I'm very hyped and excited for the third book that is apparently coming out next year, which is only going to be written by King since Peter Straub has passed away. I'm also kind of worried about it, about the quality, but I hope that King put in more effort with that Talisman 3 than his other recent output. Then I read Die linkshändige Frau by Peter Handke. This is another one that I just wanted to read because it's, you know, modern and highly praised, and I enjoyed it, but it didn't get me hyped to read more of this author, sadly. Oh God, we are already back to Stephen King because his retelling of Hansel and Gretel, the children's story with illustrations by Maurice Sendak, that was released in 2025. I mean, I would recommend it. What can you do wrong? It's Hansel and Gretel, with some very good illustrations. I like this hardcover that's out. Yeah, I mean, there really isn't much to say. It's solid. Then I read Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I already read Haunting of Hill House and a short story collection of her called The Lottery. I don't know if this is also in English. That's just a German release of her short stories. I really like her writing style, and I really liked this book. Again, it's much. It's not horror in the sense you would expect. It's very. How would you say that? It's not really slowly paced, but yeah, it's atmospheric. It's slow burn, maybe is a better term. But then we go back to science fiction. Werner Winch, The Peace War. I liked it. I don't have much to say about it though. It's just an enjoyable like sci-fi novel. It has a sequel which I am curious to check out eventually, maybe. And speaking of sequels, the next one is more interesting in that regard. Der Verdacht by Friedrich Dürrenmatt. That's the sequel to Der Richter und sein Henker, The Judge and His Hangman. It also works on its own. I was surprised. This really picks up immediately after the previous book, but works as a standalone. And the story is really interesting, with the main character now just going after just a hunch he has out of nowhere that one of the doctors he encounters is an actual Nazi who used to work in a concentration camp. And it's just very well told and suspenseful, especially near the end. And how the main character is going to get out of this situation. What's, if he's even right, what's going to happen. Pretty fucking amazing. These two books really made me a fan of Dürrenmatt as an author. Oh, but then we get to the third book in the Dresden Files series. I like the first two because they were like, what do you call it? Urban fantasy? They were detective stories, but with fantasy elements in it. Vampires, ghosts, what have not. And then we got to the third one, and I really didn't like it because it kind of abandoned the detective stuff. Grave Peril is the name, and I will continue the series with the next one at least, but this one, I don't know, it dropped the detective aspect, which I enjoyed in the first two books, so I really didn't vibe with this one, but I still like the main character enough and his relationship with the side characters that it's still entertaining, but this really was a disappointing read. Next one, we have Kelwitz Stern by Andreas Eschbach. This is basically the story of E.T. It was something different for Eschbach from what I've read of his books so far, because it very much is a straight science fiction comedy about an alien who basically inherits Earth, because that's like tradition in his species to get a star gifted to you, and his was planet Earth. And yeah, it's fun. It has a lot of good comedy in here because he's crashing in Germany, and that's something just I like, having like an ET like story set in Germany. The comedy is good for the most part. One thing I actually like, the very end, when people learn, oh, there's an alien on Earth, and we get, for just a chapter basically, or a paragraph, the POV from the Americans, and specifically from the US president, and he's kind of like confused and angry that the alien is in Germany and that the mothership basically is not making contact with him or the US. And I just like that as like a subtle dig at like, oh, all alien stories have to center on the US. That's something I liked a lot in here. Oh god, and now we get to one of the biggest disappointments of the year. Timur Vermes wrote a book called U, which is short for U-Bahn, I guess. I really like Er ist wieder da, in English, Look Who's Back, his satirical story about, oh, what if Hitler awoke in modern time? And then he wrote this one. He's trying to do something with the writing style that doesn't work on any level. It's really fucking terrible. It's a story about two characters being stuck in a train, basically, that's never stopping. And I guess they learn something about each other and themselves, but I'm not clear because the writing, it's told from the POV of the female main character. And it feels like she has like schizophrenia. It's insane. It's really just a bunch of thoughts with no cohesion or anything. There's entire pages where it's just one word, below it, two words, then one word, like, oh, darkness, sweating, my arms hurt. No, but it's weird. It's such a bizarre style, and it gave me a headache reading it. And the story also doesn't really have any point to it. This was just a failure on every level. And speaking of failures on every level, for some reason, because I like torturing myself, after this I read Stephen King's latest novel, Never Flinch. I made an entire video on it. It's Stephen King's worst book of all time. And he already announced, oh, there's going to be another one in this series of Holly Gibney wannabe crime novels, a genre that Stephen King cannot write, but he refuses to accept that fact. Oh my god, it's utter trash. So naturally, after that, I treated myself with another classic. I read Watership Down by Richard Adams. With the story about, the rabbits finding a new home. I was surprised what the main story actually is, which is the rabbits trying to get into like another kingdom, so to speak, and steal all the females because they need to breed. That kind of shocked me that that's the main story. But I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend it. After this, okay, this is not a book. This is a collection of short stories that was released for free on Amazon, the Shivers collection. A bunch of horror short stories with stories by Joe Hill, Owen King, Stephen Graham Jones, Grady Hendrix, Catriona Ward. And I wanted to read it because Joe Hill and Owen King, obviously Stephen King's children, who, interesting. And then these other horror authors like Grady Hendrix, I would be curious to check out. So I read these stories. Shockingly, like actually shocking, Owen King, who's a terrible writer, wrote the best short story in here. It's pretty mediocre, but it's solid. And so it's better than the rest. This is really not a good collection. It's for free. And that's the best thing I can say about it. After this, I read Die Auferstehung by Andreas Eschbach. This is I guess, an alternative universe to the Three Investigators, die drei Fragezeichen, where they are grown up and have to investigate a crime now and come back together. And we just see where they end up late in life, in like their 60s or whatnot. I really enjoyed it. It works perfectly fine as a standalone crime novel. Even for me as someone, again, I didn't have much experience with Die drei Fragezeichen. In my childhood, sure, a couple of those stories, I did read them. I watched at least, I watched both live action movies. But I'm only vaguely familiar with the franchise at this point. But I enjoyed it a lot. So naturally, after this, I read another famous crime novel, The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. It's fantastic. I really loved it, and I'm curious how this is going to be continued next year in January 2026 by Max Allan Collins, who's also a writer I really enjoy, because he's writing a sequel to this. I don't know how this would work, but hey, I'm curious. After this, I'm gonna knock this one out in one now, because it's a trilogy. Origin. This one I was very curious about because it's written by the three greatest German sci-fi authors. And by greatest, I mean the three science fiction authors currently writing. Andreas Brandhorst, Joshua Tree, and Brandon Q. Morris. Again, those other two are using English-sounding pseudonyms because German names apparently don't sell well within Germany even, which is just a shame. So, Origin. The premise is fascinating. It's supposed to be about the future of humanity. They discover evidence that the human species started in a completely different star system and they have to go after that. And that is interesting. And the way it's told is fascinating as well, with the setup in book one by Brandhorst. And then for the second book, we are basically just in the spaceship that's going to the different system. And then the main story of finding anything about the original humans and the origin of humankind is handled just in the third book. And not that greatly, in my opinion. The third book I like a lot, actually. It is told in a very different way than I expected, focusing on a bunch of different characters and storylines before the main character actually comes back. The main character from the previous two books only has like the last 100 pages of the third book, which kind of annoyed me. But overall, it's a solid experience, and it's solid. It's a good way to get to know these other two authors because again, I already knew Andreas Brandhorst as an author, but this was my first experience with Joshua Tree and Brandon Q. Morris. And yeah, it made me interested in checking out their own work. After this, we get another release from 2025, King Sorrow by Joe Hill. Holy shit, I really like this one. I had kind of high expectations because this is Joe Hill's first novel in a long time, and it's a very Faustian tale about a group of friends summoning a dragon to get rid of some people that are attacking them after them. And then we follow this group of friends throughout the years. There's fantasy elements in here, there's horror elements, and it's structured in an interesting way, where each part is its own mini episode, basically. I would highly recommend this. Honestly, this barely missed my top 10 favorite books of 2025. But I really loved it, yeah. I still think Nosferatu is my favorite Joe Hill novel, but King Sorrow is definitely up there. It's ambitious, it's epic, and what's also to be mentioned, it's over 900 pages, but holy shit, the pacing is insane. It's fucking nuts how quickly I went through this book. And it's going to be released in Germany in 2 books because it's so long. Which is kind of a shame. And I would really recommend, if you're reading this in German, just do it like together, because there's like 2 months between releases. Just wait until both are available, because breaking in the middle is stupid. Okay, so after this, I started reading more comics because vacation time and stuff. I had more time to be at home and read comics because I don't like taking comics with me to work to read like I do with normal books. So this year I watched one of my favorite movies of all time, and arguably the greatest movie ever made, Freddy vs. Jason. And finally, I read the sequel comics, Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, and Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, The Nightmare Warriors. The first one, Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, I like it for the same reason I like the movie. It's that it keeps the crossover simple in terms of what it brings in and, getting these characters to meet up and getting that to work. That's what I really like in the first one. Nightmare Warriors does the opposite, and that's also why I like it, because it turns into an absolute fanboy bukkake, if you will. It throws everything in here from the franchises unashamedly. It's fanboying hard, and honestly, with the restraint shown in Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, I appreciate that in the sequel. You know what? Yeah, we're gonna throw all of this in. Fuck it. We're gonna celebrate it. And I appreciate it. I rank both of these very highly. Of course, there's also Jason X, which is a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, one of the greatest sci-fi epics to rival like 2001: A Space Odyssey. I would argue it's better, at least in visual effects for sure. Um, I'm very hyped to read the Jason X novelization and the sequels, which, yes, there are sequel novels to Jason X. Because that universe, it just demanded expansion. And after this, I just jumped into a bunch of Batman comics. So I reread Batman Year One by Frank Miller, obviously, 10 out of 10, it's fantastic. Batman, The Man Who Laughs by Ed Brubaker, which was very good. I enjoyed rereading that. Also in my copy, there was this Green Lantern Batman story, like this team up, I guess. I don't know anything about Green Lantern. I didn't know anything about why the original Green Lantern apparently was in Gotham and like celebrated as the city hero. I assumed that they were like space cops, but I could still follow the story, and it worked as its own crime story, and stuff. So that was fine. I read, you know what? Before I get to the rest of the Batman stuff, I read The Hook and the Eye, which is the Felix Leiter spin-off novel written by Raymond Benson. I like this book a lot. It may beat out the Moneypenny Diaries, I'm not sure yet. It's a very solid American detective novel with Felix Leiter as the main character, and despite the fact that it follows the formula of like Felix Leiter as the American private eye taking on a case, but it also has like an end of the world kind of Bond-esque element with what the plot turns out to be, which I don't want to spoil. But it also shows restraint, which is appreciated because James Bond is not mentioned by name once. Only twice in the book does Felix remember, like he recalls his friend. Oh, I have this British friend who's working for the government, and he was present when I lost an arm and a leg, which is obviously talked about because this takes place after Ian Fleming's Live and Let Die. But again, he doesn't go too deep into it. And again, Raymond Benson is one of the best Bond continuation authors. I appreciate that he shows restraint here. Instead of being like, hey, and here's a cameo by James Bond, obviously, he has to be in this. Nope. This is far more respectable. After this, I read Die Nibelungensage by Gustav Schalk. This is a short retelling of the famous Germanic story, which I need to read the original Nibelungenlied, but I appreciated this one as my first introduction to the topic because it's very simple, and easy to follow what is laid out here. So I would recommend it to newcomers if you don't know what that is. This is a nice introduction, in my opinion, at least. Back to comics, I read the original Aliens vs. Predator by Randy Stradley, which I enjoyed a lot. I like the main character, and I like the setup as well with this story, where it takes place, how they brought the aliens and the predators together. It's well done. Yeah, again, these versus comics are pretty damn solid. After this, I read 5 Decembers by James Castrell, which is another hard case crime book, which is recommended by everybody. And I'm no exception. Read this book. It is one of the best crime novels I've ever read. It's a crime novel in a historical setting, which then actually ties into it in a bigger way than I initially expected. And it's absolutely fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. Then I read Fairy Tale by Stephen King, another one of his modern books, but it's better. It's so much better than the rest of his, him trying to write crime novels nowadays is so terrible. And Fairy Tale, it begins with one of King's strengths, which is the relationship between a younger teenage character and an elderly man, and the mutual respect and what's going on there, the relationship they develop, that's all good. Then it turns into the actual fantasy story with the main character having to save a kingdom and defeat an evil, and that's solid, but not that great. I still prefer the Talisman as like King's straight up, almost YA fantasy story. But Fairy Tail is one of the best modern King books, in my opinion. After this, I read Headhunters by James Luceno, which is kind of. It has an Indiana Jones flair. It is very trippy. All of the characters in here, not just the main characters, almost all the characters in this book are drug addicts. And it's fun. And the best part of it is the travelogue aspect, with Luceno talking about Peru and stuff. And, you can tell he was there. He has been there. He has seen all of it. And he's describing it. And that's the best stuff in here, more so than the actual story for me. So if you like that type of stuff, I would recommend Headhunters for sure. After this, I read a James Bond comic, Your Cold, Cold Heart by Garth Ennis. This is, well, I have read the rest of the Dynamite Bond comics at one point, and they are bloody. They do feature some violence, and knowing Garth Ennis, this feels restrained. It is violence, I mean, a lot, but I would say it's on the same level as like the Warren Ellis Bond comics. I enjoyed it. It's not a traditional Bond story because, for example, there isn't a Bond girl at all, but I think it was a very good comic, and I would recommend it for sure. I wouldn't mind Garth Ennis write a couple more Bond stories. After this, for the first time, I completed, because I only read a bit of it when I was younger, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. Finally. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't know what happened to Frank Miller later on, besides 9/11, and I don't know what else, but it's just nice reading such a classic, and yeah, it's fantastic. Speaking of which, so Swamp Thing, I read the third volume, written by Alan Moore. I don't have much to say. I read the first 2 volumes last year. I finally continued. And yeah, I mean, the covers, what does it call it? Actually, let me check, because I think that's just the best description I can give also for a review of it. Sophisticated suspense. Yeah. It's clever. It looks very good. I like the artwork in this a lot. I don't talk about the artwork enough with the comics. But I mean, what else is there to say other than it looks good or it looks bad, really? But I enjoyed it a lot, and I can't wait to continue the Swamp Thing run by Alan Moore. Continuing with comics, we have Rave, Welcome to Christmas Land by Joe Hill. This is a prequel to his novel, Nosferatu, going into the backstory of the villain, which was only slightly touched upon in the actual novel. So I really like that. I think this is a fantastic story. I like the artwork. It's nothing too memorable or unique, but it fits the story. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. It also works as a standalone, and I think it can make comic readers interested in hey, I would like to see more of this, and then check out the book. After this, I read Rob Jones' third Joe Hawk action-adventure novel. What is this actually called in English? Oh my god, I'm so stupid. At least I can take a break from talking, because holy shit, this hurts. Ooh. I'm actually too stupid to remember what this is called in English. I feel like such a fucking idiot right now. Something Eternity. I'm so stupid. But anyway, I mean, there isn't much to say about it. It's basically the same as the previous 2 books. Good action, some good humor. Sometimes it's too much humor, some good archaeological stuff, real world history, some Indiana Jones feeling, but again, it is very much shallow, quick, easy entertainment pulp, nothing that stays in your head for too long, where you keep thinking about it, but it's a solid entertainment read. Oh my god. After this, for some reason, I decided to read Batman: A Death in the Family. Another classic, if you will. This is the famous comic where they murder Robin, Jason Todd. Oh my god. This comic is so stupid, and you can feel this was the era where everyone tried to be Frank Miller or Alan Moore, and they didn't know how to do it, and it comes across, and it just feels phony. It feels so phony in this. But, and that's the saving grace of this book, it's very fucking funny. Especially when the Joker becomes the ambassador for Iran. That's hilarious. Him trying to sell a fucking nuclear missile. It's dumb as fuck. And it was funny in that way. But yeah, it's a shit comic. But then I read a good one, Noir Burlesque by Enrico Marini, and this one is excellent. I really like the artwork. He has a style that I enjoy. I read another Batman comic that he wrote and drew, which is The Dark Prince Charming. He has a very memorable style, in my opinion, and I really like the coloring in this, because it is black and white, because noir story, you know, but with occasional reds thrown in, and it just looks very stylish. And I mean, the story, there isn't much to say. It's basically every noir story you have ever seen, but as a comic, as an experience, yeah, it was very enjoyable. Oh my god, and now we come to this. So, modern comics are garbage. I think that's just the stigma and what people say, and you know, it's true in most cases, I would say. And so I didn't expect much. DC Absolute, like this new sub thing they have going on, with like, oh, this alternative universe with brand new reimagined origin stories for the heroes and characters. I didn't expect much. And then I read Absolute Batman. And I thought, well, it looks kind of stupid with like the super buff Batman and stuff. And then I read it. And holy shit. It is, first of all, it is a complete reimagining, which I like. I have to compare something like this to Earth 1, which is one of the most disappointing comics I've ever read. Because if you promise me a reimagining of Batman's origin story, and it's basically the same shit as usual, just with very nice Gary Frank artwork, well, thanks for nothing. Like, what am I supposed to get out of this, really? But this one, it is a complete reimagining. It changes the status quo a lot. It has nice artwork, and it is bombastic, it is edgy, but it feels self-aware in those aspects. And that's also what makes it work. Even if you don't like Scott Snyder, and I know he's kind of a controversial writer, even if you don't like him, give this one a chance, please. Like, holy shit. I was blown away. I hope the quality doesn't dip later on, but so far, Absolute Batman, at least the first story arc I read, The Zoo, holy shit, 10 out of 10. I highly recommend it. It made me want to check out the rest of the Absolute run, which is good, because I don't know what the fuck is going on with DC Comics, that suddenly they decided, hey, how about we try writing good comics? But DC, whatever's going on with them, I hope they continue down this path. I mean, yeah, on that note, the rest of the Absolute run. I read Absolute Superman, Last Dust of Krypton by Jason Aaron. I read Absolute Wonder Woman, The Last Amazon by Kelly Thompson. And Absolute Martian Manhunter by Dennis Kemp. I liked Absolute Superman the least out of these. It's still good. I enjoyed it a lot, and I like the reimagining going on here. Just not as strong as the other ones. I really like Absolute Wonder Woman. I don't know too much about Wonder Woman, but it was really enjoyable. Again, these new origin stories work pretty well for me, at least. You know, because they change the origin, but they want to try keep the core elements of the character and what makes them what they are. And yeah, I appreciate the creativity here. I love the artwork, and yeah, I'm hyped for more. But then we get to Absolute Martian Manhunter. So Batman, Superman, obvious. Everybody knows who they are, what they are, origin stories, everything. Wonder Woman, everybody knows Wonder Woman, not necessarily her origin story and stuff, but okay. Martian Manhunter, this is gonna offend the comic people, but he's a glub shitto in my opinion. For me, he is, because he's the green guy who used to hang out with the Justice League. All I know is by the time I started somewhat getting into comics, he was already thrown in the trash and replaced by Cyborg. So, yeah, I don't even know if he's actually a Martian. I just know he's a green guy. I don't even know what his powers are. I know nothing about Martian Manhunter as a character. So I went into Absolute Martian Manhunter. And this thing is a science fiction horror psychological LSD trip. It's insane. And he's not even the Martian Manhunter anymore. In the comic itself, he is very much called the Martian Mindfucker. And holy shit, does he fuck my mind. This is an 11 out of 10 in terms of comic. This is the best comic I've read this year. There is much you can say about the comic, like the story itself and what it's really about, exploring human psyche and stuff. That's all good, but also so much creative artwork in here. Some of the most creative I've ever seen. I can't praise this enough. Absolute Batman is just a fucking fun comic. Absolute Martian Manhunter is an experience that it has to be recommended. If you just read one Absolute title, I would recommend Absolute Martian Manhunter. I can't wait for more, in all honesty. And I'm excited to check out the remaining titles that I haven't read yet, which would just be Absolute Flash and Absolute Green Lantern. And again, I know basically nothing about Flash and absolutely nothing about Green Lantern. You please do yourself a favor and get a physical copy, because again, with the comic and the artwork side of things, they even have a fun little gimmick where it's like you hold a page against the light and then you can see through it and it shows you the actual image. It differs, and that is just so creative and fun. I fucking loved this experience. So yeah, I think I'm done. Wait. Oh no. Okay, last book. I just finished this one today. Shining in the Dark. This is a horror anthology book published by the Swedish guy who runs Lilja's Library, which is a Stephen King fan site. It's decent, and that's all I can really say about it. It has some standouts in there, which Stuart Onan has one, which is called The Novel of the Holocaust, which I wouldn't call that one horror, but it's one of my favorites, and it reminded me I have to read more Stuart Onan. Because, yeah, I would definitely call him an underrated author. I need to check out more of his stuff. But it also has a good story by this famous Swedish horror author, Lindqvist is his last name. I'm not going to... John Lindqvist. I don't know if it's my favorite in the collection, but it's it's a unique take on a modern Lovecraftian story. That was enjoyable. The worst story in that collection is from Stephen King, The Blue Air Compressor, which, I'm kind of glad I have it now in my possession, because it's one that King himself never collected in one of his collections. But holy shit, that is one of the worst stories Stephen King has ever written. You have to imagine, it's a generic story about a writer. He's going to some old house, because he wants to write a book there. And he's disgusted by the old lady who owns it, and he writes her into his manuscript, and then she finds the manuscript and she's laughing at him and says how he's a loser and a bad writer, and then he murders her. And that's the story, basically. And you think that's simple and shitty enough, but no. The story is constantly interrupted by Stephen King himself for no apparent reason. It just, in the middle of the story, he's like, hey, I don't need to introduce myself. I'm Steve King. I just want to tell you about how I got this idea for the story. I stole it from an old EC comic. And yeah, And then later on, he interrupts again. The sexual undertones here are very obvious. How he murders her, choking her and stuff. And I don't think it's supposed to be stylish. I don't think it's supposed to be meta. I don't think there's any clever touch to it. I think King was. I don't think this was Coke King. This was published in like the early 70s. I think he was just drunk when writing this. It feels like if you took like his foreword or afterword, where he talks about the creative process of the story, and he just puts it into random spots within the story. It is absolute garbage. Absolute fucking garbage. Holy shit. But yeah, Shining in the Dark, that's the collection. I mean, in total, it's worth reading. There's some gems in here. Holy shit, you say that right now. I have written it down. I actually have. It is, let me check. It's the same page as my reading list document. Okay. I have 83 books. That's how long the ranking is, because I'm leaving out stuff like his baseball nonfiction book, Faithful, or Hearts in Suspension and Secret Window, both of which are hard to find and nonfiction. And then stuff he worked on as an editor, 6 Scary Stories and Flight or Fright, or The End of the World as We Know It, which is a sequel to The Stand, but not written by him. And then also tie-ins to his TV stuff. Diary of Ellen Rimbaud, Diary of Eleanor Drews, Gwendy's Magic Feather, which is part of a trilogy of his, but it was written by his co-author only. Hard Listening and Midlife Confidential, which are non-fiction books by his band, which he only contributed to. Blah, blah. The only book of his that I'm missing on the ranking is The Plant, because that's a novella that was only released online. And then I will have a full 84 books ranking of Stephen King that I will do a video about it or a stream. That ranking is going to make a lot of people angry because what I have down as like least favorites. But that's definitely in the plan. Yeah, that's going to happen in 2026 for sure. Maybe even early on. I still have a lot of vacation left. So yeah, that is happening. It's going to be a nightmare. Holy shit. But yeah, so that was Shining in the Dark. That was the last book I read this year. And now we still have a couple of days left. The only thing that I would add is maybe all of Swamp Thing, because I only have Swamp Thing book 4, 5, and 6 left. By Alan Moore, and then I would be done with that. But then on Monday, because I ordered Absolute The Flash and Absolute Green Lantern, because I fucking love the rest of this Absolute universe so far. So I may also read those. So right now I have read 144 books, but we could maybe add 5 more if I manage to get through all of these comics, which would put me at 149, which sucks because I would, if anything, I want to hit 150, a good even number, but oh well. I mean, we should see what I manage to get through. But yeah, that's my reading list for this year. A lot of classics, a lot of really great books, a lot of different genres, very different styles, comics as well thrown in, and not as much franchise slop as the previous years. I can already say there's going to be more Star Wars in the next year again, because while I am still burned out and I probably won't touch novels again for rereads, I am open for comics because I want to review the Republic series, and I may want to check out some Disney canon books, purely for masochistic reasons, but also something like Battlefront Twilight Company is on my reading list for next year already, because that was a Star Wars book I actually enjoyed, and it's nice reading all these classics like I have on my list, but throwing in some slop every now and then, that just adds a little spice. And now it's time for my ranking, and then to close the stream out. So, top 10 best and worst books in 2025. Oh boy. Let's start with the worst. let's start with the honorable mentions. But first off, I need some water because I'm gonna die. Okay, I have 2 honorable mentions, and then we get into the actual top 10. Okay. Honorable mention number 1. Batman, A Death in the Family. Again, this comic, I don't hate it, and I think it's pretty funny, but I also read other Batman comics this year, and I mean, in general, I know what a Batman story shouldn't be like, and yeah, Death in the Family is stupid. It's try hard. That's my review in just one phrase: try hard. The comic. It's pretty much a failure. It's funny. I would recommend it if you want to read all the what is considered classic Batman comics. Just be aware it's a classic, but it's not a good one. And then the second honorable mention would be Nightmares in the Sky by Stephen King, which I can't bring myself to hate because it's just an essay by King where he isn't really saying much. And then the main focus of the book is just photos of gargoyles in like New York on buildings and stuff. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't get much out of it. So there you go. Now for the actual top 10 worst novels. Number 10, Grave Peril by Jim Butcher. I don't hate this book. It still has good character stuff in it. It was funny at parts and entertaining throughout, but it went too far away from what I liked about the first 2 books in the Dresden Files series, which is the detective, elements of it. And I also didn't like that he just randomly introduced like a main character in this with no real introduction. Like there's this knight who's like a modern guy, but he's like a knight with a magical sword, and he's just hanging out with Harry Dresden now. They are partners. And that just comes out of nowhere after book 2, in my opinion, ended on somewhat of a cliffhanger with Dresden becoming aware someone has been like fucking with him specifically over the course of the last 2 books. And there was some sort of like overall storyline being begun, but I guess not. I hope the 4th book is better. Again, this doesn't make me abandon the series, but it was a disappointing read. Number 9, Dying of the Light by George R.R. Martin. It's not bad, but I just didn't care for it. That's the best way to describe it. It's not my thing. It just bored me for most of it. And sadly, if it was great, if I was really invested and, that would have been nice. And I would have tried more George R.R. Martin. But this book just being boring for me, coupled with the fact that I think Martin is a cunt, in general, that just makes me not want to read anything else he has written. Number 8, Succulent Prey by Ralph James White. A extreme horror novel, and those are famous for being extremely gruesome and bloody and gory and violent. Sure. But at least be more creative and fun. Again, Big Head by Edward Lee is my go-to example. That's a book you shouldn't recommend to anyone because they're going to look at you funny and think you're a freak. But it was crazy and entertaining, and, I got something out of reading that. Succulent Prey has one creative idea with, the main character being a serial killer and cannibal who thinks that the reason for it is because he was abused by a serial killing cannibal when he was a child, and he thinks serial killing is like a virus. But it's not much done with it. It's just an excuse for all the disgusting and violent stuff. And I'm sorry, like, I get these books are lowbrow, but you need a little bit more than just that. Number 7, Alien, Out of the Shadows by Tim Levin. It is solidly written. Ellen Ripley being in here is both... It's what ruins the book, but Ripley herself is well written as a character, which makes it kind of conflicting. I don't fully hate this book because it does have some good stuff in it and good alien stuff, what you would expect, horror elements. But it's just so stupid. And it feels like this was forced upon the author. I hope it was, because I like to think Tim Levin may be more intelligent. I don't know if he is, but Yeah. Sadly, not good. Probably the worst alien novel I have read so far. Sad. I know Levin can write at least somewhat better than this. Number 6, Kari Mora by Thomas Harris. This novel is an actual shitpost. Read Red Dragon and then read Kari Mora. You would never guess these are written by the same author. It's night and day. It really feels like Harris was forced to write it or really just didn't give a shit to do it. And yeah, it's so bare bones, it's almost incredible. Imagine a story where all the details are missing. This feels like beyond the first draft. Is there a zero draft? That's basically what this is. Then we got number 5, Hell House by Richard Matheson. It's the haunting of Hill House, but horny and stupid. It was extremely disappointing because I love I Am Legend, I love The Shrinking Man, I had the highest expectations, and it just, yeah, it's not good. Number 4, Thrawn Treason by Timothy Zahn. One of the most overrated Star Wars writers, a mid at best sci-fi writer in general, with his favorite Mary Sue character, a bad, boring story. Yeah, I don't like it at all. The only saving grace is that it's better than Thrawn Alliances. Double vision, blaster fire is coming at me. I step to the side. Double vision. Shit. Absolute dog shit. Oh boy. Number 3, Ooh by Timur Vermes. I can see he was going for something creative and different with this very bizarre writing style. It caused me a headache trying to read it. The main story isn't really compelling anyway, at least when I can somewhat follow it. This is all in all just trash. And the fact that this was only sold as a hardcover for like crazy money. This book is like not even 200 pages. It's a hardcover. Some pages only have one word on it. And it was sold for like 15 euro, if not more. And that's just insane. I'm sorry. That just makes this even worse. So yeah, I mean, I hope I have another book of his that I hope is better and goes back to his roots. Because again, this guy wrote Er ist wieder da, Look Who's Back, and that's a very good book. Number 2, Hunters of Dune by Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert. I did another stream about this one. It's shit, it's cancer, it's disrespectful to Frank Herbert's work, it's disrespectful to Herbert, to Dune, to the universe, to writing itself. It's shit. And the bad part is, it is already shit, and then the last chapter happens, which is setting up Sandworms of Dune. When the robots come in, because everybody who reads Dune, everybody knows, oh yeah, robots, Terminator, Skynet, that's the thing. Sure. It's absolute garbage. And also, it should be noted again, I brought this up already in the stream where I reviewed it, but I started Hunters of Dune, I paused it for an entire year and then just continued from the chapter where I left off. And this book is so Kevin. He just keeps repeating the same information again and again and again and again to stretch the length of the book. I was able to get back in and just, I was right back into it. I didn't feel like I was missing anything because he kept repeating the same information. Fuck Hunters of Dune and fuck Kevin J. Anderson and fuck Brian Herbert. But now, that was just number 2. Let's get to the number 1, and oh boy. Never Flinch by Stephen King is one of the worst novels I've ever read. It's the worst Stephen King book of all time, and it's not even a debate, really. I was kind of debating with myself because he has released a bunch of stinkers, especially lately. Never Flinch is incompetently written. This is the first book of his where I could understand people making the conspiracy theory that he has ghostwriters. This is the first book of his I could believe he had AI write parts of it. This feels like it came straight out of the first class in like a creative writing class. First time being there, first attempt at writing a novel. That's this book. It feels like King has unlearned all of the lessons he has learned over a career of writing. It is incompetent in so many areas, like character writing, dialogue writing, plotting. So many basic plot holes that are, oh my god. And then add on onto all of that, you have to add Stephen King being completely detached from reality, from the reality he's writing about. And I'm sorry, having to age shame, but Stephen King is almost 80. And you can tell, you can very much tell. If he did stuff like Hansel and Gretel or like Fairy Tale, where he's just, Grandpa King just trying to tell like fairy tale stories and stuff, and not doing like, very suspense-filled crime stories and stuff, maybe that would be better, in all honesty. He's lost all bite, first of all. He lost touch with anyone who's under 70 years old. His dialogue for 20-year-olds in this book, who unironically in the year 2024 say YOLO. I'm out of words with this one. And he's already writing the next Holly Gibney novel. Hype. Again, I have some hopes for Talisman 3. I hope he put effort in and trying to honor the legacy of Peter Straub and stuff. And that book is mostly going to be fantasy, and unless he's going to retcon Black House and stuff, that one is going to be set mostly in a fantasy world, so you can maybe get away with bad dialogue. Well, not bad dialogue, but he doesn't have to write about modern stuff and modern slang. So yeah, that is the top 10 worst books I've read this year. Some real fucking trash among them. But now, the top 10 best books I have read in 2025. These are the books I would recommend you all. The few of you who have stuck until here in the live stream, please give these books a chance. Read them. You won't regret it. So, let's start with number 10. Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This book has interesting, at the time, contemporary scientific topics with cloning and stuff. It works as an adventure story. It works as a horror story. And it even works, if you have seen the film, this offers enough different stuff and is still a very enjoyable read on its own. Number 9 is Schachnovelle by Stefan Zweig. Again, I wish I could tell you what this is called in English. I think it's called The Royal Game, actually. You can look it up. It's a post-World War II story about a man who was imprisoned by the Nazis and learned to become a master chess player. That's all I'm going to say about it. It's just fantastic, highly recommended. It's also very short, Number 8, The Price of Freedom by A.C. Crispin. This book is gigantic, and much like A.C. Crispin's Han Solo trilogy, she gives a great backstory to the character of Jack Sparrow, expands the world, expands the character, makes him interesting, and it just works. She's just fantastic. Rest in peace, by the way. I wish she would have written more stuff, but here we are. Price of Freedom, if you can find it, get it. It's mostly available online now because the physical book is totally out of print, but you can find it. Number 7, Absolute Martian Manhunter by Dennis Kemp. This is one of my favorite comics of all time now. Again, I said a lot about it already. It's insanely creative. I can only assume because, again, I'm not familiar with the original Martian Manhunter, a radical reinterpretation of what the Martian Manhunter is. In this one, he's the Martian Mindfucker, as we know. And yeah, I just loved it. I absolutely loved this one and can't wait for more of it, honestly. Number 6 is 5 Decembers. This is one of the best crime novels I've ever read, being set in a historical setting with the attack on Pearl Harbor and stuff, going in a direction I wasn't really expecting, and just being very well written and just fast-paced as hell. Highly recommend this book. Number 5, Der Richter und sein Henker, in English, The Judge and His Hangman by Friedrich Dürrenmatt. Another great crime novel. Can't recommend this one enough. It's very short, but I love his writing style, and I really like the twists in this. Number 4, The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This is very memorable. This is fucking insane. It's a story about a woman who wants to become a tree. And it's told in 3 separate novellas, if you will, all about her, but told from the POV of different characters. Like, first it's her husband, then from the perspective of like her in-law, and then from the perspective of her sister. And there's a lot you can get out of this book. Again, I don't want to spoil, but it has some great fucking imagery in here. Then number 3 is Ghost Story by Peter Straub, which is up there as one of my favorite horror novels of all time. It is fantastically written. This is what I would call literary horror. This, I just try to imagine this story written by Stephen King would be trash, but Straub elevates a simple ghost story about basically a shapeshifter in a way. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's tense, it's atmospheric as hell, and I just really enjoyed it. But you have to be aware, Ghost Story is very much slow burn. And that's the best type of horror, you know. Not very on the violent side. There's violence in here, obviously, but yeah. If you like slow burn horror, Ghost Story is it. Number 2, Liebe deinen Nächsten by Erich Maria Remarque. This is a fantastic story about, you know, people on the run from Nazi Germany, having to jump borders, you know, between different countries, having to live without a home, and going into that. There's another romance in here as well that works fantastically, and very memorable and fun scenes in here as well. Again, Remarque is just one of the all-time great writers. And this one is up here, maybe my 3rd favorite of his books. I think the English title is something like Flotsam. Again, if you can get it, definitely do so. One of the absolute best. And this leads me to number 1. Number 1 is Das Jesus-Video by Andreas Eschbach. In terms of pure fun in reading, this is it. Again, the best way to describe it is if an Indiana Jones story wasn't a pulp action adventure, but like a slow burn, down-to-earth thriller. It's a shame this one isn't really available in English unless there is like unofficial translations, but I had a fucking blast reading this one, and there is a sequel that was released like years later, so I'm curious to check that one out. And since I just realized I forgot the honorable mentions for the best ones, let me give you these 2 closing out. Not quite in the top 10, but still among the best I read this year would be World War Z by Max Brooks. Again, this is the quintessential zombie book because the genre doesn't really offer much in terms of novels. Again, like I mentioned, there's the quintessential vampire book like Dracula, but there is no like actual classic with zombies other than this one. And I mean, there's good reason for it. It's elevated by the narrative, the structure being told as like this historical report, you know. this would be the first honorable mention. The second would be And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I wasn't expecting much, but it kind of blew me away, and yeah, I definitely want to check out more of her books now. It doesn't feel old-fashioned at all. And even though I was vaguely familiar with the premise, because again, it's such a famous story, I was still very much surprised by the twists in here. So yeah, those are some of the best books I have read this year. There are many more I talked about during the full, live stream and talking about all of them. Like King's Sorrow by Joe Hill was so fun, as was Nosferatu by him, or Watership Down. So much good stuff in here, just so much good stuff. Absolute Batman. That one as well. So yeah, that's basically all the stuff I've read in 2025. I really focused on reading, and I got a lot out of it. And I hope I can keep it up in 2026. I already have a bunch of books on my list, a bunch of classics as well. I'm pretty hyped, stuff like The Expanse, finally, because I own that and I want to get through it. Some Isaac Asimov books. Finally getting into Robert Heinlein, Starship Troopers would be the first attempt. Some more German classics, both Remarque, but some other writers like Hans Fallada, some other classics. There's just so much stuff, but we shall see. And again, I'm a bit more into comics as well, because now in my free time, that's also fun, going into comic books, because they are quicker reads than full-on novels. But yeah, thank you for sticking around. Almost 3 hours of just going through this list. Holy shit. Whew. Well then, see you maybe in the next year, or maybe I'm already going to do a Stephen King ranking live stream. But I'm missing one book, The Plant, and I think I'm going to wait until I have read that one, so to make it as complete as I possibly can. See you then. Goodbye, everyone.